Just north of Houston, Texas, there's a little known gem of Conroe, Texas that has taken fire. So many people are hitting me up about it. I'm getting calls and texts every week asking me what I think about Conroe, Texas, and it's actually become one of the fastest growing cities around the greater Houston metro. And so we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to do some vlogging. We're going to do some map tours. We're going to give you the pros, cons, everything you need to know about living in Conroe, Texas, so you can decide if it's actually a great place for you. If that sounds good, stay tuned. First things first, where the hell is Conroe, Texas? Conroe, Texas is a suburb that is just north of Houston. And so it's about 30 to 35 miles north of downtown Houston. And so just looking at the route here, you're right up I-45 and it's a pretty straight shot. You're a couple exits away, especially on some of these areas of Conroe that are just south of downtown Conroe. And so once you start getting into these areas like off of 242, this is technically also Conroe. There's a lot of communities that are right along this 242 corridor. I've covered a ton of them over here. We got Mavera, which is one of my favorites right now. You got Artavia over here as well. And you have some communities over going towards the old Egypt side as well. But this is basically all Conroe right here. And so looking at that and looking at where the woodlands are, you have a couple of situations where if you go and you turn left off of 242 and get on the I-45, one exit down, you're in the woodlands. And so you are just a stone's throw away. And so that is where we are when it comes to location of Conroe, Texas. You're nestled up against Lake Conroe, which is a boatable, fishable, just, lovely lake that we have north of Houston. This is probably where some of the big boating happens up in here in this area. Comparing that to what we have over on the northeast side, which is Lake Houston, is just way bigger, just way more footprint that you can have. They got $1 million houses up along this thing. They have some condos, townhomes, all the things that you would basically need from a living and enjoyment standpoint. Lake Conroe is super nice, restaurants, everything that you got, everything that you need is basically up there. Essentially located for everything that you would want to do if you have a lifestyle that has you north of Houston for sure. But if you have a commute that's going to bring you in and out of Houston, if you got your fingers crossed and you're lucky, you might get lucky and not have too much traffic, but the potential of you having traffic on I-45 is highly likely. And so just be prepared for that if your lifestyle brings you in and out of the city. But great location, especially for people that want to be kind of near the woodlands and have that lifestyle that is more green, more lush. Definitely a great place up north, close to the water, so you don't have to feel like you have to make this trek all the way down to Galveston, because my friend, that would be a hell of a drive to get all the way out here to Galveston. But I do have some clients that love to be in Galveston and they say the drive isn't that bad. They just look at it like a vacation day. But definitely where we are right now, lifestyle is going to be more leaning towards being more north of Houston. So what is there to do in Conroe? The fact of it is that there's everything that you need that you would want to have in any of your major cities that you would want to live in. So any of your restaurants, any of your shopping, any of your grocery stores, any of your movie theaters, any of the stuff that you would want to do, you would have access to it in Conroe, with the benefit of it being probably just prettier. As you go into what is more like downtown Conroe, like OG stuff, they're beautifying some areas out there. And so you're definitely going to see that as you kind of get to that kind of downtown hub, that there are definitely some places that they're beautifying and just trying to keep that old town charm, but modernize it a little bit. They got some coffee shops, some nice little restaurants out there. As you go a little bit more north, this is probably one of the biggest draws to Conroe, is that you are butting up against Lake Conroe. And so along here, you're going to have your restaurants, you're going to have your water sports, you're going to have your boating, all the stuff that people that want to be on a lake or near a lake are going to love and enjoy. This is an unrestricted lake back here where you can do motorized boating, which is very uncommon for a lot of these communities have their own lakes and things like that, but you usually can't put motorized boats or anything on them, or jet skis on them. And so if you want to have that lifestyle and you want to go full throttle, go all at it, this is where you can do it at Lake Conroe. There's going to be real estate up and through and around Lake Conroe, restaurants, just things that you can do that are just super nice. out there in the area. Parks galore. And just from someone that deals with new construction a lot, to be somewhere where you can be actually in a town, in a place that is, being developed, and they have infrastructure out there for you, and it's not just forest, it's not just country, but to be able to look around and actually see trees. I can't tell you how important it is for me to just see trees, to just feel like I'm not in Groundhog's Day just doing the same thing over and over again. To be out here up north and to see that there are just so many things that are just pretty lush green, that just look like things would have looked back in the day. That's just always refreshing to me as someone that does, I would say, probably 90% new construction. And I'm usually out in these areas down here where you see it just gets real flat and a little less green as you kind of get to some of these suburbs. So definitely something that is super cool about Conroe, and I believe why it's one of the fastest growing places in the greater Houston metro right now is because it has a great location. It has a ton to do, and you can't go wrong if you're making Conroe your home. So who is Conroe perfect for? Conroe is perfect for a lot of different people. I think it does well for young families that are looking for solid schools with some of the lower tax rates. When you compare it to places like Cypress or compare it to places like Katy, I don't know if the school ratings are quite there. However, they are going to be some solid school ratings out there. I have people that are retiring that I'm helping move to the area. They're coming from lusher, greener, more expensive places that are primarily cold. They want to get away from the cold and they want to still see some nature. And so it works perfectly for people like that. I have people that have hit me up that are hell bent on being in the woodlands and they want new construction, but there's very limited places where you can do that in the woodlands. Woodlands has basically been built out for 30 years at this point. And so there's not much more land. I've seen a couple pop-ups of new construction kind of here and there, but for the most part, new construction options are very limited. And so this is perfect for people that want to be close to the woodlands, but can't quite either afford to get in there and build new construction. Conroe is perfect for those people, and I get hit up by that type of person the most. The people that really want to be in the woodlands, but know that there's not really that much new construction out there anymore. Another one of my clients that's moving out there is a doctor that's going to be working in the medical center in the woodlands. Again, kind of piggybacking off the last point. They are working in the woodlands, don't necessarily want to be in an older home. And so now we're looking in the communities surrounding the woodlands. And that happens to be all of these brand new master plan, really nice luxury communities up and through that whole 242 corridor and beyond. And so those are the four types of people that I think would work kind of great and work well for the area. People that are looking to be near the woodlands, people that are raising a family, want to be in decent schools, but maybe not pay the premium on taxes that you would pay in like a Katy or Cypress or some of these other places that have a lot of these master plan communities. All in all, I think is a really great location for a lot of people, young professionals, people raising families, as well as retirees. I've got clients all through the spectrum, and they all seem to love it for their specific reason. And so if you are looking north of Houston, definitely give it a shot. But now let's get into the weeds. Let's get into the most frequently asked questions that I get asked on an almost daily basis of what helps someone decide whether or not this community of Conroe is going to be a better fit for them over like a Cypress or a Katy, a Spring Umber, wherever you're looking at. Let's do a deep dive right now, get into the nitty gritty of it, the taxes, the flooding, the diversity, everything that you want to know about. Let's dive into it right now. Really quick, while I got you here, let me introduce myself. Hi, my name is Aaron, and I help families and busy professionals buy luxury and new construction homes around the Houston metro, saving them time, eliminating stress, and hopefully having a little fun along the way. And if you're considering making Houston or any of its suburbs your home, I would love to be your go-to. Call, text, email, hit the comment section down below and let me know if you have any questions about this community or any of the suburbs in general. I would love to be your go-to, but without further ado, let's hop right back into the video. I would say by far the people that hit me up the most and reach out looking to either relocate to the Houston metro or looking to buy a home in the Houston metro are young families. And so one of the most important things that come up in their life as they have kids that are kind of like my family, and where we're almost at that school age, you want to know what the school system is like. And so just checking it out right now, Conroe ISD is rated number 1 best school district in Montgomery County. And so right out the gate, you are in an A-rated school district. And so some of those fears that you have as far as academics, diversity, college prep, all of those things that you're going to care about when it comes to the development of your child, you're in good hands in Conroe ISD. Now, I caution you with saying this. All of our city suburbs outside of Houston are pretty gigantic. And as you can see on the map that we showed earlier, the original Conroe was way up north in that little pocket, and Conroe has kind of spread like all of our suburbs over time. And so as you spread over time, there are going to be smaller, less known little country towns in there that are kind of being annexed to Conroe. And within there, you have the potential to have some schools that didn't have the resources, didn't have the tax support, didn't have whatever they needed infrastructure wise to be a highly rated school. It was more so basically for the rural town of Woodlock, for example, or the rural town of Egypt, for example. And now that they're being annexed to Conroe, they are basically being part of Conroe ISD. And so some of those schools, and it's going to be neighborhood specific, some schools are not going to be created equal. And until the infrastructure, until the tax money gets into those schools, and until the socioeconomic status of that whole community is upgraded to be at this high dollar luxury price point that a lot of these new construction and communities are going for, you could potentially have some C-rated schools in there that you would be like, man, I'm paying a premium back here. Why am I in a C-rated school? Why is my kid in a C-rated school district? And it's just the fact that Conroe's growing and spreading, and some of those areas didn't really need to be state of the art at the time, but now that the communities have spread into there, eventually it's going to happen, right? But for whatever reason, that's just kind of how it is out here in the suburbs. So you would have some areas that are like a little bit more OG that you'll see will be A plus rated. Then you'll have some areas that are a little bit in that like more B range. And some of the newer locations that are kind of being annexed into Conroe, you'll see that a lot of those may be C-rated schools for some of the middle schools or high schools in there. But as time goes on, and as more infrastructure, as more taxes kind of get poured into the community, you're going to see that those ratings are going to eventually start to go up. Mainly because people like yourself have decided to move there. And so let's take a look at this a little bit. Academics, A-, diversity, A. I like to see that. We're going to dive into that a little bit more in depth. Go and look at the student breakdown. Diversity, we got about 70,000 students currently in there. And I know that that's going to grow with all those communities that are popping up out there. For the most part, the breakdown is almost 45% white, 40% Hispanic, African American under 10%, so on and so forth. It's almost a 50-50 split between male and female in the school system. And so I would say from a diversity standpoint, that's one of the concerns that I typically have when I go kind of further and further away from Houston. I am a black man. My family are black people. And so when it comes to being in a place that doesn't have the diversity numbers that are more in line with what a diverse kind of America looks like, I always kind of have an apprehension or a pause. What I can say is that as someone that is out there, I'm out in Conroe probably like once a week at this point. And I will say that the more and more I go out there, the more and more that I'm just out in different communities in different areas, the fears that I had or the discomfort that I had about just being out in what I used to consider just the country is getting less and less. Now, it's not to say that you won't come across people that have a certain belief or have a certain background. I personally never haven't, and it's definitely not going to say that even in places that are super diverse that you don't have those kind of issues, because even in the city of Houston that is the most diverse, you definitely come across just a-holes wherever you are. But I will say that the diversity based on the school numbers, which is usually a good indication of kind of what it's like in the area, doesn't really do it justice. I mean, everywhere I stop, there's just people of different backgrounds, different ethnicities, just kind of all over Conroe. And like I said, I'm out there like once a week at this point, either doing tours or getting content or doing walkthroughs or something for my clients. I'm out there a lot. And I would say that the more and more I'm out there, the more and more that I'm just kind of, I don't have my blinders on because of the discomforts that I may have had in the past. But now I'm out there and I'm just seeing that it really is diverse. And there's, for example, places like Mavera, super diverse that I've seen. Harper's Preserve, super diverse that I've been seeing as of late. Artavia, however you like to say it. A lot of places out there are just getting super, super diverse. Grand Central Park, the more and more I'm out in Grand Central Park, the more diversity I see every time I go out there, and I'm out there a lot. So I would definitely say, just from a diversity standpoint, from a education standpoint, you really can't miss out in Conroe right now. Now, is it gonna be as diverse as maybe like a Cypress or a Katy? I will not say that it will be on that level of diversity, but it definitely is not less than 10% like I'm seeing right here on this document. I just don't necessarily know if I agree with that statement. Now, this question is probably the biggest elephant that is always in the room, especially for people that are moving from other places. Did it flood during Harvey? What's it like? Should I be afraid to move up there? You know, like, what's the landscape when it comes to flooding and living in Conroe? So like I tell all my clients, if it can rain there, it can flood there. And I'm going to suggest strongly that you get flood insurance regardless of where you decide, whether that's Conroe or anywhere else. And Conroe is no different from any other place. If it rains harder than 45 minutes to an hour, you're going to be inconvenienced on some level. That doesn't mean that your house is going to flood. That doesn't mean that your house is going to float away. But if you are someone like me that has these little cars, these low profile cars, will you be able to ride as freely as you would on a not so rainy day? Probably not as much. There's just some places that you're going to have to press pause and say, let me wait until the water drops. Let me just kind of do my thing. There are a lot of little low dips and under bridges kind of in the Conroe area, not too dissimilar from a lot of our suburbs. There's a lot of places that you'll see the little flood gauge signs on the side of the road that it'll be like, this is 10 feet, turn around, don't drown. You'll see that just kind of all through our suburbs, and Conroe is no different, just because there's little dips. And so if you get an hour worth of hard rain, the potential of flooding is everywhere. But as we look into the map and kind of take the emotion out of it, it's going to depend on your specific community. There are some parts of Conroe that are X. And as you can see, there's a lot of houses in these X zones, right? As you kind of go a little bit more north towards Lake Conroe, you'll start to see that some of these communities are maybe a little bit closer than you would like to some floodplains, but that's just the reality of building in the greater Houston metro. As we pull out and we look at all of the suburbs, there are no, I would say, quote unquote, safe suburbs. As you go towards some parts of like a Humble, you'll start to see that you're getting close to Lake Houston, so you got some flood risk. As you go more southwest and you're in the Missouri City, you're kind of close to the Brazos River down here. So everywhere pretty much has a risk in the greater Houston metro. Conroe is no different. And just like any suburb, even in Houston, places that don't have water, if you're comparing that to Harvey, if your specific neighborhood took on that kind of heavy rain for days at a time, you had water issues. It's unavoidable. And any suburb is basically going to present the same problem. I had some clients that lived up in Conroe during Harvey that weren't impacted. And I've had some people that I've seen as I'm just kind of doing research or looking in areas for some of my clients that are looking to relocate to Conroe, and some of those neighborhoods did have issues. And it's going to be a 50-50 kind of mixed bag as we go up and through, and we're looking in the Conroe area. But like anywhere, I don't want to say if there's anywhere that is just like if it rains, you're going to guarantee flood anywhere in Houston. But there are places with greater risk. And then I would say if there are some suburbs that you're looking at out here and you want to feel a little bit safer, maybe kind of being in some of these a little bit more developed communities out here a little bit further south that are further away from Lake Houston. But even still, it's going to be a case by case, as you just see some of these little creeks and streams that kind of run up and through North Houston. It's going to be a case by case sort of basis when it comes to flooding. On our end, if you want to avoid a house that's ever been flooded or areas that's ever been flooded, we can definitely do a deeper dive. There's some tools that I have as your agent that I can give you access to on our end. You know, we're going to go to the FEMA maps. We're going to look at this. This is going to be the first line of defense. We'll see if we're in a zone that requires flooding. We'll go, and if this agent, hopefully, fingers crossed, they do what they're supposed to do and they give you a seller's disclosure. And so on our end, they did give a seller's disclosure. So we would do a deep dive on pretty much any property that you are seriously looking at, and we would see whether or not they've had any issues that they have reported. And going down on this document, they are not in a flood zone. They don't currently have flood insurance, so that's a good place to start. They are not currently near a controlled reservoir, so that's a good place to start. Then, have you ever filed a flood claim on the property, or has anybody prior to you that you know of filed a flood damage claim? And they say no to both of those things. And so that's pretty much a great indication that this house and maybe even this community hasn't flooded. Of course, we would do an individual check. What I like to do is kind of pick some neighboring homes that have sold around my clients' houses that they're looking at to just verify that even on a couple streets over, it wasn't a big deal or it wasn't a big issue. But we have some things on our side that we can look at to make sure that you aren't buying a flood limit. But at the end of the day, even if you are in a less flood risk or a less flood prone area, I super highly suggest that you get flood insurance regardless. But this is a real estate channel, baby. So what's real estate doing up there? Real estate up there is beautiful. You have small communities. You have huge master plan communities. You have lake living. You have forest wooded living if you want that. You have low HOAs, no HOAs if you want that and be a little bit more secluded. You got so many different varieties of life that you can have up there when it comes to real estate in the greater Conroe area. And it doesn't mean that you got to break the bank to actually get something nice out here. Along the 242 corridor, there's a couple communities where you can get somewhere in that low 2s to low 3s to get a really nice new construction home. There's going to be communities out here that are a little bit smaller where you might get a little bit more square footage, but not necessarily all the frills of the amenities that you would get in like a Mavera or a Artavia or a Harper's Preserve. You go a little bit more north, you'll start to see some of the other communities like Grand Central Park, which is nestled in between 45 and the 336. There's a nice marketplace out there. This is one of my favorite communities out there, and that's not breaking the bank as well. You can get in there and get a nice size home somewhere around that like $400 to $450. And that's not to say that that's the lowest entry point. You can get in there for like the mid 3s, give or take, for some of their smaller footprints, and still have all the amenities in the 336 marketplace and all the things that you have in that community. And so it is definitely a place that is super affordable. Many of these places have tax rates that are sub 3.5, which is something that is becoming increasingly more difficult in the Houston metro, especially in these like master plan communities. When you get out here to some places like a Cypress and you're looking in like a Dunham Point, or you're looking in like a Bridgeland, some of these are like 3.5, 3.6 on their property taxes. And to have an entry price point as high as some of these locations, Dunham Point is damn near entry price point at like $500,000. And so to have almost a 4% property tax rate and have an entry price point of like $500,000, you're paying damn near $20,000 a year just for taxes. And so to have beautiful communities like this with also a lower tax rate, I believe Grand Central Park is like sub 3 right now. Mavera is like 3.1 right now, which is fairly low to say you're going to get like a full service community up in here in the Conroe area. And so real estate is great. Real estate is booming. You have options from, like I said, more rural all the way to master plan communities that give you all the bells and whistles and gives you the community manager that's going to be planning events. You have these small communities where it's basically just new construction house in the woods, and you got sidewalks, and that's the only amenity you got is basically a walking trail. You can pick whatever your desire is out there in Conroe and not necessarily need to break the bank. Or you can go as wild as you want in some of these communities like a Grand Central Park, where you can have custom builds on a lake, all the bells and whistles, everything you want. You can get up to a multi-million-dollar property if you want. Conroe, Texas has definitely become one of my favorite communities, and I hope that this video showcased just a little bit of why you should give it that second look if you haven't done so already. Call, text, email, hit the comment section down below and let me know if you have any questions. If you found some value in this video, definitely check out this video right now.